What's going on? I wanted to talk about this Marshall Origin 50 that I have here. This is a great amp. I want to talk about the setup of it a little bit. It's kind of hard to get a bad sound out of this thing, in my humble opinion. I've got a Gibson Firebird here, and that's pretty much all I play is the Firebird. It's got a different pickup in it than what it came with. You can see those exposed pole pieces. Back to the amp. It's definitely interesting whenever you turn this thing on. Right now I got it in low power mode, which is still pretty loud. It's borderline on, is it gonna disturb the neighbors if they're standing outside my house because my house is butted up against them. And you're looking at this right here, the master volume is cranked. On this amp, regardless of how you got it set up, whatever your EQ settings are, and I can tell you, man, this thing's got several different sounds in it. Man, it's AC/DC all day long. I know a lot of amps say that, and just because they got crunch doesn't mean that they're AC/DC worthy, in my humble opinion. But man, this amp really is it's got that woofy bass. It's got snarl. That EL34 bite. It's a total package, man. As long as this amp is reliable, dude, this is a great amp. And you may be saying, well, is this your first amp? No, man, I've had lots of amps, lots of Marshalls and stuff, and man, this one is quickly becoming my favorite. My Vintage Modern just went out on me. My Marshall Vintage Modern 2x12 combo. And even though I do prefer the KT66 tubes, man, this one, I think I prefer this one, honestly. I know that may shock some people, but it's kind of got that sound I was looking for. But I do wish that the tubes were KT66s. I can go into that more of that later, different video. But anyways, on this amp, when you first turn it on, even if you got it here on 2 and you got it in a low power setting, you're gonna know that it's kind of loud. It's not real loud, but it's not whisper quiet. And even if you got the gain all the way up, and you can have the pull boost out, which is as much gain as you're gonna get from the preamp, you're maxed out. It's not got a lot of gain. If you got the volume here, you got to get your volume up past halfway. And once you get it up past halfway, you start cooking. Then that power amp starts distorting. And unlike a lot of amps that have a power regulator, power attenuator, whatever, this one actually works. And it works surprisingly good. I've used attenuators before on my Marshall JMP, 100 watt JMP, and it just drops. It takes some of the sensitivity out of the volume. Is all it did, in my humble opinion. So like on a lot of Marshalls, there's 0. If you turn it right there, man, it's like, oh man, that thing is loud, and you can't turn it down any. There's nowhere in between. There's nowhere in between, 0 and 1 to go. It's like if you're on 1, it's pretty loud for the house anyway. Maybe if you're gigging, you put it on 2, and I think most guys that own JMPs, JCM 800s, even DSL 100s tell you that 2 is pretty loud. I mean, can it go louder? Yeah, absolutely, but it's pretty loud. So that's a lot of those plug-in attenuators on the back. What is it? THD. They're not as good as this. And I've had other amps that have had similar to this, but man, this one is it's really good. It's really good. So, you gotta crank this thing up. There's no getting around it. And this is the 50 watt version, so in the low power mode, it's going to be the loudest out of all 3 of them. And as far as house worthiness, I think you have to ask yourself, who else is in the house? Because if you crank it up even on the lowest thing, it's not obnoxiously loud, but it's still pretty loud. Louder than what somebody else in the house, in the next room is going to be wanting to hear, I think. They're definitely going to be able to hear it. No ifs, ands, buts about it. So I think if you're considering the 50 watt version, you may want to think about that. I can't speak for the 20 watt, it may be the same. You know, the low power setting may be pretty dang loud. Not that, like I said, it's undoable. I live alone, so it's not that big of a deal. But I was just sitting there playing it again, and I had it cranked all the way up. And frankly, there's not a lot of difference between half and full volume. It's just you're getting more power distortion out of it. The more saturation. There's not a whole lot of difference in the output between half and 10. So I was just playing it, and I was like, man, it's kind of loud. If somebody was to be outside, they could probably hear it, outside my house, and it's 1:45, so in the morning. That's definitely something to keep in mind, is what I'm saying to you. Maybe the 20-watt version, and maybe even the 8-watt version. I don't know if the 8-watt version's got a different speaker output, and it maybe the way you want to go and just plug it into a different cab. That way you can crank it a little bit harder. But I would tell you, man, this thing doesn't lose a whole lot of tone. Even though it's different on each setting, the lowest setting still sounds really good. A lot of times you lose a lot of that zing whenever you put them on these low settings or half power and stuff. You just lose something. You're not happy with it there. At least I haven't been. And this one I could leave it on the low power and be completely fine. Of course, I want to put it on a higher power, and the mid is a step up in loudness. It's not like I got to cover my ears, but it's a step up in loudness. You can definitely hear it. It gets quite a bit louder. The 50-watt version I really haven't messed around with because, like I said, you have to crank this volume. If you got it on 2 in the 50-watt version, boost, pull out, maximum, everything. You could put all knobs on 10, which is going to give you the most amount of everything that you can get out of this amp, and then dial it back on your guitar to ear. It's still on the high power mode with the volume, master volume there. It's still not. It's pretty clean. It's a pretty clean. It's like, well, especially for modern day players, they're gonna be like, whoa, wait a minute. This thing is not. It's not what I'm looking for. This is not really a modern player's amp. In my opinion. I think that if you get it and thinking that it is a high gain amp, even though when you push this master volume, especially in the two lower modes, you get quite a bit of woof and oomph out of this thing. More than I need. It's fine. It's fine for what I need. Playing AC/DC rock and roll, I'm into that saturated, just nasty. I don't think that anybody ever questions how much gain Angus Young uses. And, this gets you there. I know a lot of amps claim that, but, man, this is one of the best ones, in my opinion. Better than just about anyone that I've played. And let's keep it in mind, I play in my house. I don't play in a venue somewhere and stuff. So, I got to stay grounded in reality on that. If I was to use, and I've had JCM 800s before, and they're not very good in the house, but once you start cranking them, man, they sound freaking great. But this thing, gets you that ballsy sound even from the JCM 800. I would say once you start cranking this master volume in low mode and stuff, you're definitely in JCM 800 territory. You're right there. Which JCM 800s ain't known for being over the top, but they got plenty. When you get that power amp and that saturation, it's a different type of sound and gain than the preamp gain. Most modern players are preamp gain players, so you got to keep that in mind with this amp. If you're just wanting a bunch of preamp gain, this amp isn't going to do it. It's really the power amp. I would say the preamp gives you about 40% of your overdrive sound, and that power amp, the master volume being pushed, gives you the other 60%. Is maybe even 70. It's pretty clean. It's a pretty clean. Not that it's Fender clean, but it's clean. It's not. It's right there on the edge of breakup, but it's not. Screaming or anything. If you got this master volume down, so if you buy one of these, whichever model, keep that in mind, please. It's something that you may or may not know before you take it back try that. And like I said, it may be too loud for your situation. I completely understand that. I can, so get the right wattage. I went with the 50 because it's got the 12-inch speaker. Why they didn't put the 20 with the 12-inch speaker and the 5 with the 10-inch speaker, I don't know. I think that's the only criticism I can come up with this whole line. It's cool. It's really good. I can't speak enough about it. I really can't. It's just got a woofy. The bass is a lot looser than what a lot of modern players are used to. It doesn't have that tight focus bass. So if you're looking for that tight focus bass, and you get this amp thinking, well, it's a modern day rendition of a Plexi, and I would say that it's somewhat of that. It harkens back, the origin. It really harkens back to that sound. It really does. Does it get you exactly there? No, there's nothing like the real thing. Let's be honest. But man, it gets you. It gets you there. It gets you there. It's like having a remake of a car that's very similar. It's not the same thing, but man, it fulfills what you need it to fulfill. Hopefully that, because nothing beats the original, but you can't play those. you literally can't play them. So they're kind of obsolete because most places won't let you play them because you can't crank them up. So you need to keep that in mind, that this is something that gets you about as close as I've ever gotten to that sound from those, and I've played those before, and they're just too stinking loud. So if you're thinking about one of these, keep the wattage in mind. Most definitely keep that master volume in mind. Your setup, this tilt knob is pretty cool. It's definitely, to me, sounds better in the half to this range, from 5 to 10 than it does from 0 to 5. Your mileage may vary on that, but I have a hard time getting a bad sound out of this amp, in person. The bass sounds, it's got a lot of bass in it. It's like a very woofy, not focused bass, but just a woofy type of sound. So keep that in mind. The speaker in it surprisingly sounds good. I don't think that I would replace the speaker in it, and I'm a pretty big speaker snob, but the only thing that I think I would replace on this is the tubes. It's got kind of a grainy sound from the tubes. You see those glowing in there, little beauties. The tubes, the Marshall tubes have a grainy sound from the factory. There's just preamp tubes are not real great sound in my humble opinion, and I can tell just since I turned this on, it's got the same preamp tubes that it had whenever I bought it. One other thing about this, shout out to Lighterfoot P. I thought the effects loop wasn't working on this. It turns out you have to have the foot switch plugged in order for the effects loop to work. I can't recall any other amp having to do that. Of course, I haven't bought a newer amp in a while. I think the newest amp that I've had, 4 or 5 years ago, was the Orange OR15. I don't even know if it had an effects loop. It may have, but there's nothing foot switchable on it that I remember. But certainly not, if it did have an effects loop, you didn't have to have the foot switching plugged in order to have the effects loop work. So shout out to him for letting me know that. I didn't know that. I've had a lot of amps, and this is the first one where you got to have the foot switch plugged in for it to work. So keep that in mind. Most definitely. I thought there was something wrong with it, but there isn't. It works great. Great amp, man. Great amp. As far as the sound, I hope that the quality of it. I've had Marshalls go out before, unfortunately. I just had my vintage modern go out. I've had a JTM 60 go out, which is not a JTM 45 Plexi. It's like a JTM 600. I've had one of those go out. So, they're tanks, but they can have issues, and I hope this stands the test of time. I really do. I think that this is going to be a gem for anybody looking for that sound. So, I guess we'll take it out. We'll sit back here and maybe play a chord or two. See right there when you got the volume down. It's got a good sound, but it's not. It doesn't have that zing as when you turn it up. So a little bit of bots playing there, but you get the gist of it. It sounds good. It's really loud right here, sitting in front of it. It sounds good. It's a cool sounding amp. Thanks for watching.